Indonesia is hosting a meeting of leaders and senior officials from Africa in the resort island of Bali. The participants agreed to enhance economic cooperation among countries collectively known as the Global South. More than 20 countries are taking part in the Indonesia-Africa Forum. Indonesia is hosting the event for the second time, but this is the first time African leaders are participating in the gathering. President Joko Widodo said international solidarity is declining nowadays, and developing countries are the most affected.
We need a new direction and vision, a new strategy and new tactical steps to achieve more equitable and inclusive development for developing countries.
Indonesia has been seeking to strengthen its influence among the Global South nations by boosting cooperation on food and energy. The country is buying more food and crude oil from African nations every year, but the volume still accounts for about 3% of Indonesia's total trade. Meanwhile, China has been deepening ties with African nations through infrastructure projects and massive investments under the Belt and Road Initiative. In the Philippines, the tropical storm Yagi has left at least 4 people dead and 10 others injured, officials said Monday. Flooding has been reported in some low-lying areas across the country, including Metro Manila. Government work and classes in the capital and nearby provinces have been suspended. The bad weather forced the cancellation of several domestic flights, while hundreds of ferry passengers were left stranded at various ports. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says the government is monitoring the situation and is ready to help people affected by the storm. The country's Weather Bureau forecasts Yagi to intensify as it passes north of the Philippines on Wednesday. The tropical island of Guam saw intense fighting during the Pacific War that left thousands dead, including civilians, as Imperial Japanese troops and U.S. forces fought for control. 8 decades later, people on both sides are still looking for closure. NHK World's Sakai Noriyuki reports.
Echoes of the Japanese occupation stand in stark contrast to Guam's image as a lively holiday destination. This runway at Guam International Airport was built by local people, forced to work by their occupiers. A ceremony was held nearby in July to mark the 80th anniversary of liberation. This man's mother was one of the forced laborers.
She had worked here during the war, and she passed away before they did the first memorial. So I kind of made a promise to come every year.
During World War II, Japan deployed about 20,000 troops to Guam, but they were routed within 3 weeks of the U.S. landing in July 1944, with some 19,000 killed. Matsumoto Heitaro lost his uncle Goro, a signal officer during the war. Neither his remains nor belongings have been found yet.
The war will not end until the remains of the deceased soldiers are returned to their hometowns in Japan. I truly feel that way.
So far, the Japanese government has brought back only 516 sets of remains, less than 10% of the total unaccounted for. U.S. military bases take up about a third of the island, restricting access to much of the land. Even on private property, there must be concrete evidence of remains before excavation is allowed. Japan still runs field surveys in search of clues. This Guam resident says he heard there used to be caves dug out by the Japanese military along a riverbank, and that many of them had died there. Using ground-penetrating radar, the team found a place where rock could have been removed. But no direct evidence of caves was found this time. Efforts to continue the search led to 10 sets of remains being handed over to Japan this summer.
We will never forget the atrocities of war, but that doesn't stop us from moving forward to forge friendship and relationships with key partners. And of course, Japan is one of our key allies and one of our partners in this part of the world.
We'd like to use this as an opportunity to strengthen efforts to recover the remains in Guam.
At the memorial service held by Japanese residents of the island, Matsumoto called for support to recover the remains.
The most important thing is not to forget. 80 years have passed, but I will not give up doing my best as long as I draw breath.
The passage of time may make what happened in Guam a distant memory for most, but some bereaved families in Japan still hope their lost relatives can come home. Sakai Noriyuki, NHK World, Guam.
And that wraps up our bulletin. I'm Rosalind Bovalia in Bangkok.